Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, if you're interested in listening to David Kellum and the Ole Miss crew, you can listen to the Ole Miss Arkansas game 6:30 Saturday night on Sirius XM, channel 190, or you can just search it on the SXM app just by Ole Miss Rebels. The Locked On Ole Miss podcast is there as well. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis, alongside Michael Katz from the Daily Journal in Tupelo, and we are going to get to talk about the drunk uncle at Thanksgiving football game, and that is the Ole Miss Rebels versus the Arkansas Razorbacks. How you doing, Michael?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm just absolutely fantastic. I actually really like this game. When everybody was having debates of who Ole Miss should keep if they went to a 9-game schedule and all these rivalry debates were happening during the offseason, I kind of wanted Ole Miss to keep this Arkansas game because a lot of people might be listening to this not really sure about it, but Ole Miss played Arkansas back when they were in the Southwest Conference, and there's a lot of history between these two schools that goes beyond just the last 30 years, and I would hate to see that disappear, and these games are just so, for lack of a better word, drunk.
Yeah, no, I keep telling people this weekend is going to be abnormal, and I'm not sure what that is going to look like specifically, but I guess it was the fourth game I ever covered here was the 52-51 game. And then, of course, last year was just a different type of weird. Mm-hmm. I wasn't here for the 5-6 interception game. But I also remember was it 4th and 25, 4th and 26, whatever it was. I remember watching that one on TV back in another lifetime ago. They play weird games, and I know Arkansas they're reeling a little bit. There's no question, but it always seems like they bring it for this game.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that KJ Jefferson is from right up the road, and he wants to bring it in this game. And I kind of hate that he didn't get to play at Starkville last year, because he would have probably brought it on that one as well, because it seems to be his mission in life to make Mississippi State and Ole Miss regret the fact that they didn't recruit him. And I'm like, hey, that class, we got Matt Corral. There's nothing against you, buddy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it ended up working out pretty well. But, I mean, I guess in I think he started 2 games against Ole Miss. He's got 9 total touchdowns. And I remember specifically that 52-51 game. I mean, he was just I mean, it was unbelievable. It was 3 passing, 3 rushing, I believe. Again, right down to the very last play, that 2-point conversion. He enjoys this game. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, and you know, the one thing that I've noticed this week, and I've talked about this week, you have Jaxson Dart, who was the Davey O'Brien National Quarterback of the Week and SEC Co-Player of the Week, which, by the way, them doing Co-Player of the Week is kind of a sellout thing. Just name one Player of the Week. But Jaxson Dart, this is going to be the first game where Jaxson Dart was, for lack of a better term, high up on the mountaintop, to where he has to deal with success. We've seen how he's handled adversity. He's competed for the quarterback job every year. He's never actually had a chance to enjoy the fruits of his labor. This will be the first chance that we get to see how he handles that success.
No, and that's a really good point. Like you said, Jaxson has always, it seems like, been fighting for something. And now he has the accolades. Everybody knows who Jaxson Dart is. He had an incredible game, one of the better ones I've seen in a while. And now, you know, how do you respond? I mean, I think responding to adversity is really important, but responding to success. And I think that goes for Ole Miss as a whole team is going to be really fascinating to see this weekend, because there's no question winning that game after the Alabama loss was huge. It's maybe a season saver, depending on how you want to look at it, but you can't drop this one either. Going into the bye week, you need to be feeling good, and you've got the home stretch coming up after that. You know, you lost the Bama game. You really need to win, I think, both of these. And so I think it's does your head get too big? Have you been hearing how good you are for the last, and I know Lane talked about it too, for the last couple of days. All they heard was how great they are. If they're not careful, this Arkansas team is very dangerous, despite what the numbers might say. And I'm fascinated to see, do they have that same fire and juice after a win that they did after a tough loss? I think that's going to be really interesting to monitor.
Yeah, I think I referred to September as being about survival with Alabama and LSU. You want it to survive that month, and Ole Miss did. They're 4-1 after September, but October becomes about building, because if you do the things that you're supposed to do, if you beat Arkansas, if you beat Auburn, if you beat Vanderbilt, that Texas A&M game is just looming out there with a chance to almost be as big as what we saw just Saturday night against LSU.
Yeah, A&M's starting to look really good. I know that Miami game was a little bit of a debacle, but they're starting to put it together. No, you're absolutely right. Everybody knew their September was going to be a gut check, and like you said, they made it through. Obviously 5-0 would have been great, but they got to feel pretty good about 4-1, especially with coming back to win that game against LSU the way they did. I mean, it should be all chalk from here. The rest of the this month in terms of being favored and whatnot, but those are the most dangerous games. And I know that Auburn game we talk about, this weekend being weird. That one's going to be weird for a lot of other reasons.
It's going to be 2 weeks of weird.
It's going to be a lot. But you got that, and Vanderbilt's, it's kind of Vanderbilt. They're in a tough spot right now. But again, you don't want to get caught looking ahead to the A&M game, and so I think we learned a lot about Ole Miss last week. There's no question that was the gut check game, but I think we're going to learn a lot about them this week too, to see where their heads are at heading into this stretch.
Yeah, everybody talks about competing against a wounded animal whenever a team loses a game, but this Arkansas team is absolutely a wounded animal. 3 straight losses. They lost in Baton Rouge in a close game to this LSU team. They lost to BYU at home. They lost to Texas A&M, who they didn't particularly look good doing it. But the situation for Arkansas is, if Arkansas drops this game in Oxford, next, they have to go to Tuscaloosa, and their season's basically over if they drop this game in Oxford. I think you're going to get their absolute best effort in this game. Ole Miss is going to have to withstand the absolute best of Arkansas, because honestly, losing this game is basically, after that, just waving the white flag on the season.
I agree. No, this is one of the most, as of right now, this is their Super Bowl. They need this game to get to bowl eligibility, and I know there's a lot of heat on Sam Pittman right now. I know a lot of people aren't super thrilled with coordinator hires and how this is going right now. I mean, this is they're fighting for their lives right now, and they always play Ole Miss well, but like you said, the wounded animal is often the most dangerous. I'm expecting them to bring their best. Will it be enough? I don't know. They've played very weird games too. Like you said, that BYU game was, I think that was a 1-score game. The LSU game was a field goal at the buzzer, and then A&M, they were bad. I mean, I think they gave up 7 sacks. Rocket Sanders came back and he ran for 35 yards, whatever it was. It was tough sledding. It's going to be really interesting to see where they're at, mentally, because Sam Pittman's an emotional, intense guy. I've always thought they pick up his mindset. I have to imagine he's probably feeling this right now too. So it's going to be interesting to see how that manifests itself this weekend.
Yeah, and you mentioned if he's feeling it and all this pressure's on Sam Pittman, he's a former offensive line coach. He's been down there coaching the offensive line himself. Arkansas is going to line up with KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders and say, stop us. I mean, they're not going to be cute running the football. I mean, throwing the football, are they?
You wouldn't think so. But again, I imagine they watched last week's, LSU, what LSU was able to do through the air. And obviously it's a different set of skill positions that LSU has. I mean, they've got NFL first rounders all across, their wide receiver.
Brian Thomas, holy cow.
Oh my goodness. And he wasn't even quote unquote the good one.
I know.
So no, obviously a very different set of skilled players. But you'd have to think, KJ's had success throwing against Ole Miss before. And so, maybe they saw something that they want to exploit. But I think that if, like you said, if they're going to win this game, I think they have to do it the way that they always play, and that is lining it up and just running it down your throat. And LSU was able to do that last week. Again, last week's performance I don't think it's one of those ones that you just throw away, because it was just such a weird game. Both teams, it was just one of those shootouts. You just forget about the awful defensive display, the 700 yards, whatever it was. But I do think that it's probably a little bit alarming for Ole Miss that happened. I will give them credit. I think the few games before that, I was really impressed with the adjustments that Pete Golding had been making. So I think part of this might be a little bit of an aberration. I think LSU's offense was really good, but long way to say, I think that Arkansas, they might have seen something on tape with what LSU was able to do, but ultimately, if Rocket Sanders isn't exploding for those huge gains, I don't think they really have much of a chance.
Yeah, it's one of those situations. I think if they play their best game and Arkansas plays their best game, Ole Miss is going to win the game. But if you get weird, if it's unclean, if you don't clean up these penalties, if you start turning over the football, that's how Arkansas can get into this game. Now, this is my thought on the LSU game. Jaden Daniels was the fastest player on the field. I mean, it was not even close. He was the fastest player on the field. And Ole Miss tried to spy him with Suntarian Perkins. And that worked against Jalen Milroe. Suntarian Perkins was actually, there's a football player alive that he could not chase down. And he would try and spy. You would see Suntarian back up. Jaden Daniels would run, and he just couldn't get there. I don't think KJ Jefferson can do that. So if Ole Miss wanted to play the spy game a little bit again, if they're doing well against the run and spying either him or Tennyson, I think they might be able to spy KJ Jefferson better than they could Jaden Daniels. I just think that was a terrible matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden Daniels, watching him, it's almost like he glides and sort of is able to contort his body in weird angles and make people miss when it looks like there's no way that he should be making people miss. And I know he takes a lot of hits for it and he pays for it, but he is a very different runner. KJ isn't going to make you miss. KJ is going to try to pull you over because he's the size of most defensive ends. He is just a huge guy. I do think he presents his own challenges, but I think you would probably take that over the guy who can make you lunge at air for sure.
Yeah, and man, let's see. Deshaun Anthony's hit on Jaden Daniels. That finally is going to replace the Leonard Fournette on Deontay Anderson hit that they've been playing for the last 6 years. But he's taken that hit. Florida State absolutely missile blew him up. He got blown up against Mississippi State. If he tries the things he does now in the NFL, they're going to kill him.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I'm from Southern California, so I remember Jaden Daniels a little bit coming up through the high school ranks. He was a really big deal, but it was always he was really small, and he was a little bit of a late bloomer, and he grew, I think he's 6'3", but the frame, if you're gonna play the way he does, you better be built like KJ Jefferson, just in terms of being able to take those hits. But he's fun to watch, and I watched. I'm a USC grad. I watched him to Arizona State, and how much better he has gotten from when he was there to now. I mean, it's a completely different player.
He has
really impressive.
Yeah, he has a legit shot to make an NFL roster. Legit. I mean, he made 3 passes in that Ole Miss LSU game that were NFL level passes. And first round receiver. Yeah, other quarterbacks would not do that. I mean, there were a couple, place good.
Yeah, there were a couple where the receivers didn't have to move their hands. I mean, it was just that. It was that. I couldn't believe he tried to throw it. I was like, no way, man. And then it ends up in there, and I was like, you know what? Sometimes the throw is just perfect.
Yeah, I think Drew Brees used to say, "There's no way to defend a perfect pass," and you saw that a couple of times on Friday night. Okay, I've got a comp for you, Michael, and I want to hear your opinion on it. And it's a comp on Jaxson Dart. My comp right now that's going through my head, and I'm always going like, who does Jaxson Dart remind me of? And for a little bit, I was like, okay, a little bit better passing Tim Tebow because of the physicality and stuff like that. No, I think that Jaxson Dart actually reminds me of Matt Corral with 25 more pounds.
The thing about Jaxson is he is so much bigger than you think. Like you walk by him and you're like, first of all, his legs are tree trunks. I mean, he is just absolutely built. He's taller. You look at him from, I guess, the press box or from on TV, and you're not super, you're not thinking, oh, this is not KJ Jefferson, of course. But man, just the way he plays, it's I think there's certain styles of play that win over your teammates. And I think Matt did this too, where they're going to do whatever they have to do. And the game that sticks out is that Tennessee game where he ran for 195 or whatever it was on the gimpy ankle and willed them to that win. And Jaxson is willing to do those same things. I think right now, Matt more polished as a passer, but Matt was in college a lot longer than Jaxson has been. But man, Jaxson he's really shown me something this year. I thought he was going to take a big step forward, and he has done everything you could expect, especially when the running game wasn't working early this year. He really put the team on his back. He does play like a bigger Matt Corral. The good news being that he's a little bit thicker.
Yeah, he can take the beating. And before I let you out of here, I'm gonna say this. In the LSU game, people are not going to notice. I think Ole Miss was down by 8 points at the time when it happened. But the last play of the third quarter, Jaxson Dart had like a 20-yard scramble, jumped over a defender. That stadium got absolutely electric. From that moment on, that is the moment where Ole Miss was not losing that game.
100%. And that is one of those, I wanted to ask about that post game, but so much happened after that it was like, okay, well, we're not going to get to this, but no, it is one of those things where I think that a team feeds off that and they say, if our quarterback wants it this bad, we can't lose this game. And it gets everybody in the stadium excited. That was again, it takes guts to hurdle a guy the way he did. That was ballsy, and I think that resonates with teammates as well.
All right, can you give a score prediction of the game?
I think right now I had like 38-24 Ole Miss. I think Arkansas could make it interesting, but like you said, they're the winded animal for sure, but I think they're a little bit too wounded right now. I just don't know if they have the dogs. I've seen weirder things happen for sure, but something tells me that Ole Miss is not going to have a problem getting up for this game, especially with how the game against Arkansas went last year. I'm sure they have that bad taste in their mouth. There shouldn't be it shouldn't be hard to get motivation.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Anyway, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Michael Katz, Daily Journal. What do you have going on at the Daily Journal this week?
We just got a lot of pregame stuff going on. I got some fun stuff planned for the bye week as well. I'll be home in California, but I'm still going to be working. So, it's going to be nice to take a little bit of a breather because, we got a lot of fun football left.
Absolutely. Take care, buddy.
Thank you.